following lecture was produced by Glorian Publishing, a non-profit organization, and is one of hundreds of lectures freely available via download, podcasts, streaming radio, and transcription. These lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. We invite you to browse our library of lectures, books, courses, and articles to find teachings that suit you. Through the support of donations, Glorian Publishing has published 40 books, hosts international retreats several times a year, offers free online courses, and many other valuable resources, available to anyone worldwide. All of this has been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Your donations make it possible for this free public service to reach thousands of people every day. To make a tax-deductible donation in any amount, even anonymously, visit GnosticTeachings.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy.
To continue our talks about the reality of death and dying, it's good for us to take a moment and become aware of the physical body that we're all using at this moment. To feel ourselves in the body, to be present here, not distracted, not somewhere else, not carried away by thoughts or feelings, longings or fears, but instead to simply be here, aware of the body, aware of oneself, aware of being aware. This simple awareness is the basis of all true spiritual development. It's from a point of view of simple, moment-to-moment presence that one can then advance deeper and discover the true mysteries of life and death. So long as we continue in our moment-to-moment progression through our evolution, or through our development, being distracted, being easily confused, being tossed around by surging desires and thoughts and worries and memories, we will never understand life. And if we cannot understand life, we will never understand death. Presence, awareness, is an activity of consciousness. It is to be conscious, to be aware, to be present, to be here and now. This takes willpower. In us, it is not automatic to be present. It is not a given. It is not mechanical. What is mechanical in us, what is automatic in us, is a state of psychological sleep in which we are continually distracted, continually torn between desires, pulled by fears and anxieties, worries, longings, envy, lust. This is what is most common in us in our moment-to-moment existence, is to be completely distracted, at the mercy of sensations, at the mercy of all of our perceptions. Whatever we perceive, we react to. And the reactions are generated in our mind stream according to how those perceptions strike us. They bring up our fear, our longings, our envy, our lust. And as such, from moment to moment, we are distracted. We are not in control of our psyche. This is the basis for suffering. All suffering is caused by desire. Desire stimulates the senses. The senses entrance the consciousness, and the consciousness sleeps, hypnotized. This is what is automatic and mechanical in us. So here I have positioned for you two fundamentally opposed states of being. The first is bright, active, cognizant presence, self-aware, self-luminous, self-generating, free of any discursive emotion or thought, naturally, spontaneously happy and content, lacking nothing, desiring nothing, present, complete, whole, at peace. This is consciousness in its natural state, unmodified. This is possible for anyone to experience, provided we know how to train ourselves to pay attention, to not be distracted. The second that I posited for you is the state of distraction, in which we experience all of the fears and terrors and even joys of mechanical life. Being caught constantly in the stream of suffering, craving, and aversion. Caught between conflicting desires. Caught between the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. It is a state characterized by all of the sufferings we already know. Fear, anxiety, stress, lust, anger, pride. It is marked most characteristically by a state of complete distraction, a complete inability to hold attention, to relax, to concentrate. It is a state in which the mind is wild. If anyone here has tried to learn to meditate, you can see very quickly how wild the mind is and how hard to tame. And the reason it's hard to tame is because we've allowed that mind to be wild for so long. But with practice, with training, you can learn to calm the surging mind. And it will relax and settle into its natural state. And in that context, you can experience the peace of an undistracted consciousness. So these two fundamentally opposed states are the basis of everything in life and death. Absolutely everything. In order to have a good life, the basis of all the spiritual teachings are the same. Be content. Learn to love. Don't covet. Don't steal. Don't kill. In other words, basic ethics that when followed spontaneously and naturally in oneself, we stop producing discursive energies in the mind stream, in our life. Killing, stealing, lust, pride, envy, fear, all produce a great amount of discursive, disturbing energy. That's why our mind is disturbed. That's why our heart is unhappy. Because of ourselves. Contrary to that, when we learn to apply those ethics and live them because we know their benefit, the mind naturally starts to calm and relax. And we gain the capacity to start to experience spontaneous joy and peace, which is the natural state of consciousness. These two fundamental positions are up to us. It's up to us and how we use our attention. In other words, the result of our moment-to-moment life depends upon how we use our attention. If our life is full of pain, suffering, doubt, stress, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, it's because of how we use attention. It's because of how we use our consciousness. And thus, the antidote is to learn about consciousness and the mind. To learn how we pay attention. To learn what it is that absorbs our attention and thereby produces suffering. And so that effort requires a moment-to-moment remembrance to pay attention, to watch oneself, to be present in the body, not distracted, not flying around in the mind, daydreaming. When we're here and now, we are simply here and now. Aware of the body, aware of attention. And that is the beginning place where real change can begin. These teachings are a form of very rigorous training, not of the body, but of the consciousness, of attention. And that training has a single purpose: to guide us out of suffering. And that training has a single point of view, which is backed up by experience, that the cause of suffering is our own self. It is how we pay attention wrongly. What in Buddhism is called wrong view. It is, in other words, a state of avidya, which means ignorance. And this is at the root, the core, the heart of the wheel of samsara. Ignorance. A lack of knowledge. That is not book knowledge, but knowledge of oneself, knowledge of attention, knowledge of consciousness, knowledge of how consciousness functions in nature. So this teaching is a training for consciousness to gain knowledge, to learn about itself, how it should function, how it functions in harmony with nature, and how it can create suffering or liberation from suffering. What in Sanskrit is called nirvana. The word nirvana simply means cessation. It doesn't mean heaven. It doesn't mean a place. The word nirvana literally translates as cessation, ending. And it means the cessation of suffering, the cessation of pain. And that's what our ultimate goal is as religious people, whatever religion we follow. It is to escape pain and to experience joy that lasts, real joy, not just the joy of getting something that we want, a new toy, a new dress, but real joy, which doesn't need or want anything, but simply is happy. That is joy of consciousness. So this training has many levels. This course that we're giving about death, the process of dying, and how to take advantage of dying, will explain certain principles about death and dying, and about levels of training that one can receive when one approaches death. We won't have the opportunity in this particular course to deal with the more advanced topics, because, to be honest, probably most of us couldn't take advantage of them. We need a lot of training to use the higher techniques. Any of us are capable of reaching that level, but it's very rare for any of us to have the willpower to do it. And this is the difference. Any of us can, if we have the willpower. One of these techniques in the higher level is called transference of consciousness. It is a technique in which a person is trained and then in turn trains themselves how, at the moment of death, to consciously direct their mind stream out of the body and into a new body. This is extremely difficult. but it is possible. It has been done, and it can be done. But it requires a very rigorous lifetime of training, which, quite honestly, most of us simply don't have the willpower to do. What that technique illustrates is the potential that we have to manage life and death. And that potential is there if we choose to develop it. Nonetheless, these teachings can still help us, even if we don't have the willpower to reach that level. Even if our sole intention is to avoid as much suffering as we can. For example, at the moment of death, no one here really would want to go to hell. I know a lot of people love the concept of hell, and they talk about it, and they listen to music, and they claim to be black magicians or vampires, and they love what they call death music. But the simple reality is, if they experience the reality of hell, they will not want to be there. As grave as our suffering can be in the physical world, it is 1,000 times sweeter than the suffering in the lower worlds. And as we explained in previous lectures, hell exists, heaven exists, and we go to one or the other depending on the conditioning of our mind, according to the contents of our mind. In other words, our karma, what we deserve. If we have created a lifetime of suffering for ourselves and others, we belong in hell, so that hell can purify us of that. Because that's all hell is. It's nature's recycling plant, in which the soul is cleansed of all its mistakes and given another chance in centuries or thousands of years of time. We all want to escape that. So by application of this science, even if we can't reach the higher level of training, if we at least learn to apply ethics, to change for the better, to not be a bad person, to abandon selfishness, to learn to pay attention and be caring about others, to stop committing crimes, whether in the mind or in the body. Those simple actions, renouncing selfish, harmful behavior, changes the trajectory of our evolutionary development. It might be enough to give us a chance to keep working. It depends on our karma. It depends on the contents of our mind. So we give this training for a broad spectrum of people. Some are not so bad. Some, simply by trying to be a good person, by trying to change their behavior for the better, can gradually and slowly change the trajectory up to avoid suffering, little by little, day by day, moment by moment. And to be honest, this is the case for most of us. Most people don't have the strong will and the circumstances of life to become a very advanced practitioner. It's a simple fact. It's rare that a person has so much willpower and is so sick of suffering that they renounce TV, they renounce movies, they renounce drinking and smoking and lust, and they give up all harmful behavior in order to dedicate themselves today, every day, exclusively to transforming their mind. If you're that kind of person, then you can learn these higher techniques. And chances are, if you have that type of daily, intense spiritual rigor, you will learn it. But the simple fact is, most of us are not that intense. Most of us do what we can, but we're so afflicted with the hypnosis of life, so deluded by the comforts of life, so entranced by pleasure, that it's very difficult for us to even meditate for a few moments, to even pay attention for a few moments. It's an honest truth. So for these levels of practitioners, there are techniques provided. Like most of us who are beginners, who don't have a lot of willpower, who are very distracted, and have a very hard time staying focused on our spiritual effort, the practice that we need most, the work that we need most, is with ethics. To change our behaviors for the better. To do good, to help others. This is complemented by a constant development of the awareness of death. To become deeply cognizant that we will die. And this cognizance, this persistent awareness that the body that we're in right now will die. As much as we pamper it, as much as we perfume it, as much as we try to give it every little thing of food that it wants and every little comfort that it wants, at a given moment, it will become that thing that we hate so much called a corpse. It will become an object of revulsion to everyone. So as much as we love this body and love for someone to come and touch it and stroke it, some moment soon, it will become an object that no one will want to touch. It will become a corpse, dead, disgusting to us. We need to develop awareness of that. Start to reduce our attachment to the body and become aware of its impermanence, that it will die. That awareness extends another step into learning about cause and effect, karma. Learning about how the laws of nature function. And when we do something selfish, such as we act out of anger, we cultivate pride, we cultivate lust, we cultivate envy, that these all produce suffering for ourselves, for others. And by simple analysis in our life of what happens when we do those things, we can, by observation and logical deduction, start to realize that hell is real and that one experiences it according to the conditioning of one's mind. And thereby, if I don't change, I will experience hell. This set of parameters is the basic level of training that has many different forms in different religions. But it is the basic level, the first level. This is the training, type of training in its different forms that every religious person in the world goes through according to the particular characteristics of their own religion. They learn about ethics, they learn about hell, they learn about how to be a good person. And the heart of all that is learning to use attention properly. Some religions do it in different ways than others. Some have decayed and don't have the complete instruction. But in general, this is what we see. If our experience of life is so strong that we've become very sick of suffering and we want more than that, then based on that foundation, there's a greater level of training we can receive. And we've talked about these levels of training in other classes. Greater vehicle and then the tantric vehicle. So there are, in essence, 3 levels of teaching in every religion, in every tradition. In this course, we're primarily focused on the first level because, to be honest, that's where most of us are. I know everyone likes to think that they're advanced practitioners, but in honest truth, none of us are. And if we think we are, we need to meditate on pride. There are simple tests that we can apply to ourselves to discover if we are, in fact, advanced practitioners. The simplest one is this. Do we fall asleep? Ever? If we fall asleep, we are not advanced. I mean falling asleep right now, where the consciousness falls asleep, where we lose our concentration, we get distracted, start wandering around for a little while, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, I'm supposed to be listening to this guy's lecture. What has he been talking about for the last 10 minutes? I have no idea. That is a state of sleep, where then we snap out of it. Another level of sleep is when the physical body sleeps and we lose complete cognizance of our self-consciousness. And then minutes or hours later, we suddenly realize we're in bed and we've been sleeping. And maybe there's a vague memory of a dream. Advanced practitioners do not sleep. They maintain a continual cognizance of their attention, even when the physical body is asleep. So let's be honest about where we are in our development. It's important because when we face death, this artificial notion of being advanced or beginner means nothing. When death comes, the only thing that matters is, can you retain awareness? Most of us can't retain awareness even if somebody turns on the TV. And that's just a little square of images and sounds. But we get totally sucked into that and lose all cognizance of ourselves. We forget we're in the body, and we start to perceive as the actor perceives. We become the actor. We forget the body. We forget ourselves. We forget who we are, and we start to feel what the actor is feeling. When the gunman is coming to kill him, our heart races. We get nervous. Our hands get cold and clammy, and we grip the chair. What's going to happen? That is a state of psychological sleep. That is hypnotism. It is 100% harmful to you as a soul. The same thing happens in conversations with friends, at work, at church, at home. When we get so engaged in an argument, in a debate, in a conversation, we forget ourselves. We are just the surging desire to be right, to be respected, to be envied, to be accepted by the others, to have security in the social environment. We forget ourselves. We lose cognizance. That is a state of psychological sleep. The same happens in sports. When we're so focused in winning that we lose cognizance of our name, our attention, who we are, other people around us, our life in general, and all our focus is on winning. It is a state of psychological sleep that is very instinctive. So this type of state of consciousness happens throughout our lifetime in many varieties and individual to each of us according to our idiosyncrasy. Some of us are more intellectual, some more emotional, some more instinctive. And we will experience these different states according to our own idiosyncrasy. What does this mean? It means that as we go through the course of our life, from birth towards death, we are continually cultivating a state of psychological sleep in which we have no self-awareness, constantly absorbed by the phenomena that are happening to us, constantly distracted by all our perceptions, both internal and external. So that when death comes, we don't even realize it. If you do develop into a serious practitioner, and you develop the skill to manage consciousness when you're out of your body, you can go into the world of the dead. And you can talk to them. And they don't know that they are dead. They continue with their same lives. Going to work, going to church, putting gas in the car, trying to sell you something, trying to get you to buy their life insurance, not knowing that they are dead. And every one of us is destined to that exact state because we don't even know that we're alive. That's how asleep we are. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. We all know the children's song. For us, life is that. It's just another dream. We have no cognizance of it. This is why we study the tree of life, the Kabbalah. This map or glyph symbolizes structures in nature and in our soul. We've explained to you in many lectures about Malkut, which represents our physical body, and that the physical body is born and dies. But the energy that inhabits it does not die. That energy is our consciousness, our mind stream. That doesn't die. It progresses according to the trajectory of its karmic flow. That is, if in moment to moment we are cultivating more and more lust, more and more pride, then our karmic flow will proceed according to that trajectory to deepen pride and lust. In other words, our trajectory is going downwards into klipot, where we can be with all of those who are very proud and lustful, which we call demons. That is the natural trajectory of that cause and effect relationship. But if instead in our life we are renouncing pride, lust, envy, gluttony, laziness, etc., we are changing the trajectory of that mind stream towards those who are free of pride, lust, fear, envy, which we call angels or masters. This is a moment-to-moment choice we make according to how we react and handle our consciousness. So what this glyph shows us are all the levels of nature. Superior levels and inferior levels. Heavens and hells. It's all very interesting. And as beautiful and complicated as nature is physically, it is far more beautiful and complicated in all the other dimensions. This is not something easy to grasp. Don't think you can study this for a couple of years and understand it. You cannot. This map is only a symbol. Every one of these spheres is a world, but every one of these worlds has worlds in it. Like in our physical world, it's very complicated. We can go to the macro scale and look at universes, galaxies, solar systems, and it's overwhelming. That's just physically. But that scale goes all the way down to the atoms, to quanta, and it seems completely contradictory to everything else. So we see many dimensions, levels, in just physical matter. So what about in the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension? It's very complex, very beautiful, very sophisticated, and no book, no graphic can teach it to you. You have to experience it to understand it. Nonetheless, all of that, everything that exists, is empty. Everything. Everything that manifests in every universe is in its heart emptiness. For us, this seems bewildering. To the intellect, it seems incomprehensible. And the intellect tries to make it into something material, as if to say, that emptiness must be a great non-existence. And we relate this to our materialistic point of view about life and death. We think, all I know is physical. I only believe what my five senses tell me. Thus, when I die, I will cease to exist. This is our way of thinking in this era. And naturally, by extension, we think, if it's true, as I believe, that when I die I will cease to exist, then that means from now till then, I can do whatever I want. I will get as much pleasure as I can. Whether that pleasure comes from sex, from killing, from stealing, from lying. And this is what we see as the way of the world now. Materialism has become so powerful that now most people don't care at all about the effects of their actions. They only want to get everything they can get. They don't care who they hurt or how they get it. And every one of us is affected by this, even if we think we're a good person, because we're getting saturated with this philosophy through every TV show, book, television, internet. All the media is saturated with this point of view, this philosophy of materialism. But let me explain something. This great emptiness, which we call the Ein Sof in Hebrew, and which in Asian traditions is called Shunyata, Prakriti. It has different names depending on the tradition. That emptiness is not a lack of existence. It doesn't relate to this concept that when we die, we will cease to exist. This is a very diluted kind of logic, and it does not relate. I'm pointing this out because there are many people who study Kabbalah and who study mysticism and religion and Buddhism, and they state, Buddhism says that everything is emptiness, which means that we don't exist in the end, and we can do whatever we want now. And there are many tantrics who teach that. But it's wrong. It is absolutely mistaken. Likewise, it is mistaken to say that we exist eternally. That after we die, we go to heaven or hell forever. This is also a mistake. So here we see two fundamentally opposing views about life after death. Nihilism and eternalism. The nihilists believe that after we die, we cease to exist, and that's it. We have one life to live. Let's live fast, get everything we can, then we die. This is wrong. Contradicts every law of nature. If we really study, we will see how foolish that concept is. And then we will start to see that that concept is a very convenient philosophy for those who benefit from it. Because there are people who benefit from that. Because they're taking advantage of the ones who believe in it. On the other side is the eternalist, like many fundamentalists who think, if I simply believe in my religion, then I'm going to go to heaven forever. No religion says that. Some fundamentalists say it, but no scripture says it. No master said that. The reason this is important to grasp is because all of us have these two warring concepts in our mind. We may not be conscious of it. But these have been drummed into us in each lifetime by our culture. If we've grown up in a Western culture, particularly those that are influenced by Judaism or Christianity or Islam, we've been very powerfully influenced by eternalism, by the repeated statement that if we don't accept the religion and be good and donate to the church, we will go to hell. And even if we don't consciously think it, that fear is in us, inside, lurking. It's affecting us, even if we're not aware of it. And also, at the same time, we're being affected by our culture, which is pushing nihilism, telling us it doesn't matter what you do. You can do whatever you want. Nothing will come of it. You're just going to die in the end and nothing will happen. So what? Go ahead and steal that. Go ahead and lie. It doesn't matter. This war is happening in our mind. We need to understand the tree of life in order to comprehend the fallacy of these two opposing views. The tree of life, even though it looks complicated, in essence states exactly what the Prajnaparamita Sutra states, which you may have heard of. It's called the Heart Sutra. It's probably the most famous Buddhist scripture. Quite simply, it states, all things that exist are in their heart devoid of existence. And all things that are devoid of existence also exist. To the intellect, it sounds contradictory. But by conscious experience, through perception, one can validate this and confirm it. And that point of view is at the heart of liberation from suffering. And it begins here and now by analyzing the body. This body, by all perception, exists. But even if we apply just a scientific model to it and start looking at the science of it, we can see that really the body is mostly empty space. If you look into the atomic structure, most of the body is empty. But that isn't the ultimate meaning of emptiness. That is a more superficial level. The real meaning of emptiness is it lacks inherent existence. What does this mean? It means the body is dependent on other factors in order to be here. It is interdependent. It doesn't exist on its own by itself. It is impermanent. The body depends on a huge mass of very complicated circumstances in order for it to be here and now. And yet we have no cognizance of that at all. None. All the laws of nature must be stable and in place. Everything. It needs an atmosphere, it needs gravity, it needs magnetism, electricity. It needs this planet. It needs food, it needs water, it needs air. It needs all the minerals and chemicals. Hugely complicated circumstances. And it needs a consciousness to work through it. It needs a mother, it needs a father. So many things. The more you get into it and analyze, you realize it's truly a miracle that any of us are sitting here now. It's miraculous. And yet we take it for granted, and we abuse the body. And we only want to use it for pleasure, not for its true purpose. The deeper and deeper and deeper we go into that type of analysis, according to this training, eventually we start to analyze what is the ultimate root of my experience of the moment. It isn't the body. The body's impermanent. I will cast it off and take a new one, just like every other living thing does. What defines my experience is my consciousness. But what is that? And when we start to inquire within, we start to see, can we find the mind? Can we really find self? Where is it? What characteristic does it have? What can you identify and point to as self? If you start to look inside, for where your thoughts come from, where your feelings come from, where the potential and possibility of perception comes from. That type of analysis is an ancient tradition of meditation, mostly known in Buddhism and Hinduism, but it also exists in the West. Descartes used this technique. And it's how he arrived at his famous aphorism, "I think, therefore I am." That was his conclusion, that the basis of being a living being, a sentient being, was the capacity for thought. But he was mistaken. He didn't go far enough. When you go beyond thought, you can start to penetrate the root of real existence. That's what this tree of life shows us. It isn't the body. It isn't the vital body. It isn't the emotional body. It isn't the mental body. It isn't the causal body. It isn't the Buddhic body or the Atmic body. It isn't even the Trikaya, the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, or Dharmakaya. These are all the bodies of the being. None of those are the ultimate nature of consciousness, the nature of being. The ultimate nature of being is the absolute, the emptiness. And that's what the Prajnaparamita was teaching us. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. It's stating what's shown here on the glyph of the tree of life. The absolute, which is uncreated light, pure potentiality, unmodified by any state at all. A pure, simple potentiality. That becomes what is. And what is that. That ultimate root is the emptiness in all things. It is something, but it is not nothing. It is not anything that can be conceived with the mind, but it is something. In its heart, in its essence, it is purity. It is pure happiness. It is the ultimate state of existence, pure joy. If you can imagine what would be the ultimate expression of any Buddha, of any great master like Jesus or Krishna or Moses, what would be the ultimate synthesis of who they are? It is that. Nameless, faceless, pure love. Pure knowledge, but beyond knowledge. It is indescribable. That is what we call the absolute state of all things, the abstractness of all things. Why is that important? It's because we have lost touch with that we suffer. A Buddha has regained touch with it. And there are many levels of Buddhas, or masters, or angels. You can use whatever word you want. Many levels. But even at the beginning level, a Buddha or master has at least touched it. And that's what changes them. Because they start to see the fundamental ignorance that all of us have. It is ignorance of that, our true nature. And then they work intensely to break the hypnotic ties to all matter, so that in the end, they are a pure expression of that. And the purest levels of that are here in those Trikaya, three bodies of the Buddha. These are different expressions of the highest level of gods in any universe. The highest, purest, most profound intelligence and love that we can possibly imagine. And they are simply vehicles or vessels that transmit that light. That potential is in us. This is the importance of death. Is that death provides an opportunity to realize it. To understand that, we need to understand these three parts of our psychology and train now to comprehend the difference between them. This is what we talked about in the previous lecture. Essence or consciousness is what we use for attention. It is the purity of the consciousness that remains for us, which for us is quite small. Because over the centuries, as we become identified with discursive, selfish feelings and thoughts, we have trapped our consciousness or essence into ego. And that's where most of us is trapped. 97% of what we have as a being, as a soul, is trapped in lust, anger, pride, selfishness, desire. There are different names for this in different religions. We call it ego, which means I, because that sense of I is that. In the absolute, there is no sense of I. In a great Buddha, a great master, there is no sense of I. They are a true individual, but not selfish, not self-centered. Their whole attention is on you. And then acting as a vehicle for either one of these is personality. So we explained all that in the previous lecture, but we need to remember it because we're going to get a little more technical into what this means. So if we were to look in a simple graphic into our nature, we can see levels of density within us. The most dense part is our physical body. And unfortunately, most of us think that the physical body is our true identity. And this is why we follow nihilism. We think the physical body is it, and when we die, we're done. That's our life, we're finished. Of course, this contradicts every law of physics and nature. What allows us to have the physical body, what activates it, what gives it the possibility to move and to perceive is the vital body. The vital body is the body of qi, or qing, body of energy. It is the energy in the physical body. It is the fourth dimensional aspect of the third dimensional physical body. The vital body is just the superior part of the physical body. Really, they're one. But we separate them because here in the third dimension, most of us cannot perceive the fourth dimension. We've lost that. We used to have it, but we lost it. But in terms of nature's laws, these really are one level. They're very closely related. And inhabiting the physical vital body is what we experience as our inner self. Mind, heart. In Buddhism, these are not separated. Mind, heart are considered one. In Gnosticism, we talk about mind, heart as mental body and astral body. In all of us, pretty much, these are protoplasmic bodies that nature creates for us, gives to us, and that we use for free until nature takes them back. These are what we experience as mind, emotion. They are the vessels that we use when we dream. They are the vessels we're using right now that reflect thoughts into the brain and reflect feelings into the heart. What is inside of those and gives those the capacity to be is consciousness, essence. Now, this is where it gets a little more involved and requires some self-knowledge on our part. What do we experience as ourself? If our stream of existence is characterized exclusively by thoughts and feelings of selfishness, I want this, I want that, I don't want this, I don't want that, then all we experience of life is mind-heart conditioned by desire, ego. That's all we experience. Anger, lust, fear, envy, jealousy, gluttony, greed, laziness. That's it. And for most people, that's it. When we were kids, or when we really fall in love, truly in love, we can experience moments of unmodified consciousness when we perceive without desire, but just love. Just giving. Not wanting, not taking. At peace, serene, happy. But it's rare. And that's because only 3% of it, more or less, remains unmodified by ego. So when you look at this graphic, don't think that these little bands of colors reflect the accurate proportions of these elements in our mind. They do not. At the heart of all this is the absolute, the emptiness, the true nature of everything that exists. None of us have experienced that. I can state that explicitly and bluntly, because if any one of us had experienced that, none of us would live life the way we do. Not one. The person who has experienced the void is not like other people. They do not waste time or energy on foolishness because they've experienced reality. One such person who experienced it at a young age was Samael Aumveor. It transformed him radically. One experience changed his life forever. The same is true of Milarepa, Padmasambhava, the Buddha Shakyamuni. Great masters who experienced that and spent their life teaching others how to experience it because it transforms the mind, the heart, the soul. That's in us. But you see what happens? This consciousness in us, the unmodified, we rarely experience. The absolute, we've never experienced. Not in our memory. Let me qualify what I said that we've never experienced it. In our memory, we have no recollection of it. We have experienced it because it is our natural state, but we don't remember. What we experience is the mind-heart, but conditioned. Not the mind-heart free of affliction, but conditioned by affliction. So our mental and astral bodies are afflicted or conditioned by pride and lust and gluttony and envy and all of that. Desire. So from there we perceive outwards through the vital body and its four ethers, which reflect and transmit the data that we receive through the senses. The physical body interacts and acts as our interface with the external world. And in the midst of this physical and vital body, between the mind-heart, is personality that we build in each life. It is with our name, our look, our culture, our language, our tastes, everything that we are as a physical person now, the way we use our language, all of that which we described in the previous lecture. So we go through our life from moment to moment as this mind-heart, surging pride, envy, gluttony, and lust, etc., trying to get more of it through the external world and to the internal world. In other words, we never look inside. Our attention is out. From the mind-heart out, not from the mind-heart in. So then, we die. Physical body and vital body are discarded. Personality goes with it. that thing, that mask of personality that has our name, our history, our culture, is tossed aside. And the moment of death, what is projected out is mind, heart, consciousness, stuck together by karma. Because the consciousness created the contents of that mind, heart. The consciousness inside of it interacted with nature in order to produce pride and lust and gluttony and envy and greed. And thus, that mind stream, having created and initiated the projection of all that energy, has to receive the consequences of that. Cause and effect. That body of ego and complicated laws is projected into space at death. And by the laws of nature, must be born in a new body. And is drawn into that new body by the contents or the vibration of this mind-heart. If we are, as a psychological entity, primarily experiencing in our life now lust and anger and pride, those are the qualities that determine our next birth. It isn't our good intentions. It is what we vibrate with. Let's think about this for a second. Imagine that you're running through a forest and you can't see far ahead of you. You're just running. And every tree that's coming at you, you dodge and you react to your environment as best you can. Suddenly, there's a precipice. The earth drops away and your body goes into the air. This is similar to what happens at death. Because in life, we're like that, running in a forest. We're just running. We don't know where we're going. We have all these ideas about where we want to go. We want to get to 65 and have a nice retirement package and be able to kick back in Florida and eat oranges. This is our idea, and play with our grandkids. It's an illusion that a lot of companies are propagating for us, so we'll give them money so they can have that. The reality is, you're running through the forest of your life, and all of a sudden the floor drops out from under you, and you can't put your feet on the ground anymore because you're dead. And your body is projected in space, not your physical body. That trajectory of your life is what's projected there. What determines the angle and direction of that body that's falling through the air at that moment? Not only the speed at which you were running and how you were directing yourself, but that last foot that you put on the ground. Right? If you had seen the chasm, you could have prepared your body and leapt. Right? Makes sense, doesn't it? The same thing happens at death. But what you're trying to prepare and propel over the chasm is not the physical body, but the mind, the heart, the consciousness. Make sense? Simple in concept, very difficult to do in practice. Let me tell you why. You leave the lecture now, you go back to your daily life, and you're going to be enmeshed once again in all your habits. Distracted by taking the train, by driving your car, distracted by all the things you have to do today. Your friends are calling, your parents are calling, you got to do this, you got to do that. You're dead. You didn't realize it. You missed your chance. That's how it happens. We have to learn to train the mind, the consciousness, the heart, the body, everything, to be constantly watching every perception that arises to us, so that when death comes, we're not surprised. That's why we study the betweens. It took me an hour to get to this point. This is what the lecture's about right now. In real Tantra, not this popular garbage that you find in bookstores, but the real thing, there is an extremely important scripture that is memorized and prayed and studied throughout life by every practitioner of real Tantra. And it is called the Root Verses of the Six Betweens. It was composed by Padmasambhava, who brought Tantra to Tibet. He is a very great master. This teaching is attempting to present to you his experience and his guidelines for you to access the experience of what is real, which is the absolute. It is beyond the astral body, the mental body, the causal body, beyond all the bodies. It is beyond everything that's manifested. It is the unmanifest. It is reality. And what he taught in everything that he taught was that if you learn to manage your consciousness, your awareness, you can perceive and experience the absolute. And that perception will dramatically change you and empower you to learn more and to truly become a great vehicle of that force. This scripture about the root verses of the six betweens, or the intermediate states, is also the basis for a very famous book that all of us know about. Most people call it the Book of the Dead. That's not the actual name. But we call it that because of somebody that translated the book more than 100 years ago, and he thought that would be more commercial. But the actual name is another name in Tibetan. It's quite long, and I won't bore you with it. That book, the so-called Book of the Dead, is a guidebook primarily for people like us who are not trained. It is a guidebook that can be read and studied to prepare oneself for death. And it's often read to someone who's dying or who has just died in order to help them navigate what's called the between. In Sanskrit, in Tibetan, it's called bardo. Most of us probably heard of the bardo. Usually when people say the bardo, they're talking about the between death and life. It's a period of time between. That's what bardo means, between. But really, there are 6 bardos, 6 betweens. The first one, and for the moment the most important, is the between that we're in right now. It is that time, that space between birth and death. So all of us are in a bardo, a state of being, which we call life. But really, it isn't living, because we're asleep. We're living, quote, a state of continual delusion, of hypnosis, where we are entranced and hypnotized by the contents of our own mind stream. We are entranced by our envy, by wanting what others have. We are entranced by pride, by wanting to be better than others. We are entranced by fear of rejection, of loneliness, of hunger, of pain. We are entranced by lust, by anger, by gluttony and laziness. We are asleep. We say vigil state out of kindness. We really aren't vigilant. We're living a dream. During this vigil state, every single day, we live a little reflection of our whole life. In the esoteric tradition, we state that each day reflects the contents of one's whole life. So how you live today is an insight into the whole of your existence. So then you can look at your life. How have I lived today? And that will tell you how your whole life will boil down in a mathematical equation. Now, if today you've been distracted, asleep, anxious, worried, angry, rushed, stressed, in other words, feeling a lot of discursive emotion, that will be the synthesis of your whole life. That's why we work to change today. This teaching is about being in the moment and transforming the moment into something better. Making that vigil state into true vigilance of one's own mind stream. Truly vigil. Truly aware and watchful, and doing what we can with our will to be the best person we can in every interaction with everyone and in every interaction with ourselves. Each day is a microcosm of our whole life. So at night, when we fall asleep, it is a reflection of when we will die. And that's why the Tibetan masters state, if you want to know what happens when you die, look at what happens when you go to sleep at night. If you lose all cognizance of yourself when you go to sleep at night, you will lose cognizance of yourself when you die. That's why we train in dream yoga. In the West, they call it astral projection. That's because the dream state is the second between. In the dream state, we're experiencing exactly what we will experience when we're dead. Because we leave the body. The mind, heart, with the consciousness, goes out of the body. The physical body and the vital body stay in the bed, recharging, resting, healing. The consciousness is projected into the world of dreams, the fifth dimension. And our experience in that time and place is characterized by the conditioning of our mind. We dream what is in our mind. We dream according to our state of consciousness. If we're having nightmares, it's because our state of consciousness is in hell. If we dream with angels and Buddhas and masters, our consciousness is not so low. If we're dreaming that we're at work and that we're chasing women or chasing men, or that we're having sex all night, or that we're killing people, or we're being chased and pursued, we're in hell. And that's what will happen to us when we die. The difference being with death, the connection between the mind, heart, and the body is severed. The third between is a state of meditation. Very few of us have experienced this. Now, I know everyone here has studied meditation. And I know everyone here thinks that they have some knowledge of meditation. But the bardo of the meditation state is not concentration. It is not a physical sensation. It is not tingling in your spine. It is not heat. It is not your chakras. It has nothing to do with the body. The bardo of the meditation state is a cognizant perception of reality. What in our tradition we call samadhi. In Buddhism, that term has a lot more meanings than just this. But in Gnosticism, we call it samadhi, ecstasy. It is, in other words, a state in which it is possible to perceive the absolute, if we know how. Now, let me warn you that in some translations of these betweens or bardos, this is translated as trance. But unfortunately, a lot of naive people have taken that word trance and corrupted it in the last decade or so. And now people have this idea that trance is what you get from listening to certain kinds of music or taking drugs or having your iPod on for a long time. That is not what it means. It is also not the state of inebriation that comes from any kind of drug or alcohol. By trance or by meditative state, what is implied here, what is referred to here, is a bright, active, very clear, very luminous perception that is not artificial. It is not induced by any chemical or tool, but it is a natural state of consciousness that one accesses when one knows how. And it flourishes spontaneously. That's why we learn meditation, is to access the natural state of the mind. That's what's meant here. So in these first three bardos, or betweens, we can see that most of us haven't experienced any of them. Because we live our vigil state totally entranced and hypnotized, and we rarely experience the free consciousness, the natural state of mind in our daily life. That is naturally at ease and at peace and filled with love. We rarely feel that. We're usually feeling the need to pay bills and rush to work. And what are we going to do to get that girl's attention and all that kind of stuff. The dream state, likewise. We usually don't even remember dreams, much less be cognizant and aware in the dream state, able to consciously direct ourselves at will in the world of dreams. Very few of us have had that experience. Some of us have. Likewise in meditation, most of us have never experienced a true state of samadhi. Even if we've studied meditation for 10 or 20 years, we might have experienced some funny sensations, we might have had visions, but never really experienced full samadhi. These are only the first six, or first three of six. So let's be honest with ourselves so that we can actually experience them, learn how to do it. The fourth between is the phase that happens at death. Everyone here has experienced that, but not cognizantly, not consciously. The fifth is reality. And the sixth is rebirth. So we see two groups of three. Vigil, dream, and meditation are states that we experience during so-called life. The next three, death, reality, and rebirth, happen between lives. The reason Padmasambhava taught these six betweens and explained them is because through training, you can learn to take advantage of them. These are all moments at which, if you harness consciousness, you can learn something. You can transform your existence. But you have to know how to do it. It won't happen on its own. You have to know how. So he wrote this scripture. He says, "Hey, now when the intermediate state of living arises before me, I will abandon laziness, for which there is no time in this life. Unwavering, enter the path of learning, reflecting, and meditating. And taking perceptual experience and the nature of consciousness as the path, I will actualize the three bodies of enlightenment. This once that I have obtained a human body is not the time to stay on the path of distractions." So this is the instructions for the first bardo, which is our physical life. It's only a short paragraph. But if you really contemplate it, study it, put it into practice, it will change everything for you. It's not complicated. It's not intellectual. Your intellect will say, this is boring. It's not for the intellect. It's for the consciousness. And what it's saying is simple. Don't be lazy. Study yourself. Reflect on yourself. Meditate on yourself. Take perceptual experience and the nature of consciousness as the path. That is the essence. Take perceptual experience. In other words, everything that you see and perceive, take that as your gnosis. Comprehend everything. Don't be distracted. That is the essence of the entire Scripture. Learn to be present at the gate of the senses, watching. This is what's explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. To be a gatekeeper. To be at the gate of the senses continually, in charge of what comes in to the mind. Exercising your will. Perceiving consciously everything. And taking the nature of consciousness as the path. This is a little deeper. It's not only to be taking everything in consciously, but also being conscious of how you do it. In other words, observing the observer. Now, I know some of us get a little confused sometimes about this split or division of attention. And we talk about it in contradictory ways, but it's really one thing. It is an all-embracing cognizance, inside and outside. It is an embracing of cognizance that doesn't divide, but embraces. That sees everything. And that takes training. This essentially continues and gets deeper as you read the Scripture and go through all of the bardos or betweens. I'll let you study this on your own time. What I basically want to point out is the essential nature of preparation for death is to train the consciousness to be present. To take all perception and transform it consciously. This is what we call in this tradition transformation of impressions. The first step is that we learn to be cognizant, self-aware. We call it self-observation. This is combined with a deep remembrance of being here and now. Remembering that we're in the body. Remembering God. These are really one thing. But we use these terms from the fourth way schools because they're very convenient. This type of self-awareness has to be very persistent, continual. Always ready and listening, observing, absorbing, taking in. And whatever arrives in us, we comprehend that because we're consciously accepting it. And this is that transformation that has to continually happen in us. You're not going to learn this in one day. You probably won't even learn it in 1 year. But think on the value of this. If you study this and reflect on it, you will see how valuable it is. How valuable it would be to reach the moment of death and to be able to pass through that gateway cognizantly and to have some will or influence over what happens when you die. How valuable is that? This especially becomes valuable when you start to reflect on the nature of death, the nature of hell, the nature of heaven, and future existences. You start to realize, I really don't want to go to hell, especially once you've had experiences of it. Personally, I have experienced it. I don't want to go there. It's horrible. It's far more horrible than the Catholics or Christians or Buddhists or anybody ever said. They always use these terrible analogies to try to scare us. But let me tell you, the experience of it is far worse. I'm not saying that to scare you, but to get you to realize this is real. It isn't just belief. It's real. We need to learn that. We need to change. When you realize how valuable this knowledge is, that it can help you transition through these phases. Death phase, reality phase and rebirth phase, you can have an influence there. You can pass through them consciously and thereby achieve a better birth. In these phases, death, reality, and rebirth, we as a mind heart, as an essence or ego, are passed through these phases depending upon our karma and depending on our state of consciousness. If we pass through them the way we are now, completely asleep, we won't have any cognizance of what happens. And whatever happens to be surging in our mind stream during that transition is what will determine what birth we'll take. It'll have a huge impact, especially if our death is traumatic. If we die through violence or through a strong illness, or if we die feeling a lot of attachment towards our spouse or our kids, that strong attachment, that pain, that fear, the violence that we experience will be characterizing our mind heart as we pass through death. And that will have a great influence on our rebirth. That's terrifying. It's something to be taken very seriously. But on the other hand, if in life, in the vigil state, we're constantly training to be present and aware, not surprised by anything, but taking in every impression and transforming that, conscious, relaxed, self-aware. And then we're learning to do that in the dream state as well, through learning dream yoga. Then through the process of dreaming, we are training ourselves to be aware in the death state. And then also, if we're meditating every day, we're deepening that training even more. Getting the mind and the heart to relax, getting the consciousness very sharp, very concentrated, very natural. These three nourish each other. Some people try to practice one and not the others. It'll go much slower for them. But if you train in all three at the same time, you grow very rapidly. You will learn a lot fast. It's not easy, but you can do it. That way, in training in these three states, vigil, dream, and meditation, when the moment of death comes, you have the possibility to retain that training, to have the tools at your disposal. There's no guarantee. It depends on how good your training is, how well you've trained yourself. That's not dependent on me or any school or any book. It's up to you. We provide the instructions, but you have to implement them. If in that moment, when death comes, you are capable of transforming that impression without attachment, without fear, without resistance, without craving, then you can harness that energy. This is the basis of Tantra. To harness the flow of existence and transform it into a force of good. In the phase of death, there is a period of time when after the consciousness is severed from the body. There is a period of time that's different for everyone. It can be as quick as a moment. It can also last for days. It's this phase called the death phase. It's the after-death phase. Most people say its average is 3 days. It really depends on the person and the nature of their mind stream. During that phase, that consciousness that is freed from the body has the potential to learn a lot about itself, to establish itself cognizant in the state of death, and to harness that. It isn't you with your name now. It is you who you really are. And that's part of the danger, or part of the difficulty. What we have to learn in these first three states, vigil, dream, and meditation. To learn who we really are. To disassociate our attachment to the body, to the personality. Because really, we are not such and such a person with such and such a name. We are not from such a country with such a language and tastes and interests. That's all personality. That will all die. But we don't know it. That's the first part. Training ourselves to be cognizant of who we really are. That reality of who we are is also not the astral body. It is not the mental body. It is not the causal body. It is that which is in the deepest part of us. That's what this teaching here states. At the fourth paragraph, talking about the time of death, he says, "Now when the intermediate state of the time of death arises before me, I will renounce all attachment, yearning, and subjective apprehension in every respect. I must undistractedly enter the path on which the oral teachings are clearly understood and project my consciousness into the uncreated expanse of space. About to lose this compounded body of flesh and blood, I will realize it to be impermanent illusion." That uncreated expanse of space is the absolute. It isn't space with stars and galaxies. It is the space of the absolute, which is inside. In other words, these three phases that occur after death, there is a strong opportunity to experience the nature of the absolute. Why? Because we're freed of the physical body and the personality and the vital body. Reflect on that. The physical body is a cage. If any of us here wanted to leave the physical body right now and go into the absolute, could we do it? If we wanted to go consciously out of the body into the astral plane right now, could we do it? At will. Samael and Vior told us to be an actual magician, a theurgist, a tantric, you must have that. Most of us don't. We try and try, but we can't really do it at will. What does that mean? That means we can't do it when we die. That means we're in trouble. If you expect you'll be able to do it at death, you should be able to do it right now. This is how serious the training is. That's why I said there are levels. We start where we are. We're beginners. We start working on improving our vigil state, improving our dream state, learning to meditate. Those provide us the foundation to start learning to project the consciousness out consciously at will and learning to manage and navigate it in other dimensions. And having gained that skill, it isn't just to go and spy on our neighbors or go investigate certain temples that we happen to be interested in or try to get powers. That isn't the point. The reason we need to develop the skill, the ability to navigate the consciousness out of the body in other dimensions, is so we can do it when we're dead. Because chances are, as serious as we are, chances are we won't reach full liberation in this life. I hate to put it to you that bluntly, but when you analyze the facts of your life up till now, are you really thinking you're that serious that you're going to achieve full liberation in one life? Just look at how you've lived up till now. As I said in the first lecture, when you take life and divide it, half life spent in sleep, 25% due to illness, sickness, afflictions, and worries. At the end of that math, we only have a few moments to practice seriously. And most of us squander it. We'd rather watch football. So let's be honest with ourselves, sincere. Chances are we need another body. Chances are. According to our karma, according to how lazy we are, we probably will need another body to work. But if we squander that chance, and at death we're totally absorbed in our pride, our ambition, thinking we're a big shot practitioner when we're really not, we'll waste it. And we'll be born somewhere where there is no teaching, and we won't get it. Or we'll be born with afflictions that will impede our progress. But if we can take advantage of that, train ourselves properly, sincerely, honestly, these three phases, death, reality, and rebirth, can energize the transition into a new body, and we can take a much better birth, cognizant. Now let me explain something important about that. There's a very big difference between reincarnation and return. I'm not talking about reincarnation here. Reincarnation is something that a master can do, a Buddha. And what a reincarnation is an incarnation of the being, conscious. This is why in Asia, true reincarnations are always celebrated with great festivals, because it's a big deal. It's rare. We don't have that ability to die, to go consciously into that world, and then to consciously choose when, where, and how to be born. None of us have that. What happens to us is we return. We die, usually unconscious, and we're projected through that space by our karma and injected into a womb by our karma, cause and effect that we set up. And then we're just in a new body. And that whole process is very traumatic for us. Our death is usually traumatic because we have a lot of attachment to the body, to family, to our things, to our wealth, to our name, to our social status. And very attached to all that, we die, filled with anguish and attachment. And that consciousness is projected through space, filled with anguish and attachment, and gets tossed by its dreams, its fears, its anxieties. Suddenly, it's born again, very traumatic, painful. The baby's screaming because the consciousness is again trapped in a body. And even if it retains some memory of the previous life, those memories are quickly lost because of the traumas, difficulties, and pains of the new life. These new parents that we don't know, this new environment. I used to be white, now I'm black. I used to be a man, now I'm a woman. What's going on? Where's my money, my status, my wife? All gone. We forget everything. A master, that doesn't happen. A master navigates these phases consciously, takes a birth consciously, where he wants, when he wants, according to the needs of humanity, according to where he or she will be able to serve them the best. That's reincarnation. This is very clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna, who is a great Christified, resurrected master. He explains very clearly, only great masters reincarnate. The rest of us are carried along by karma. We're reborn, but that's not reincarnation. So that distinction needs to be clear. I had a lot more to say, but we better stop. Any questions?
You said, what was the phrases, Bodhisattva would take a straight path and denounce nirvana. And you said nirvana is a state of cessation.
Right.
I understand.
Well, the word nirvana is like many other words that we use in this tradition. It has different applications depending on the context. Strictly translated, it means cessation. So the primary meaning of nirvana is psychological. But like the word heaven, that psychological meaning has a correspondence to matter. What that means is you can't enter the place nirvana unless your mind vibrates at that level. So that means you have to have achieved nirvana psychologically to have the cessation of suffering in yourself in order to be a being who lives in the place nirvana. So it's both. It's a psychological state, it's a place. But they are intimately related. We can visit, just like we can visit now, by modifying and managing our consciousness, our attention. If we learn these techniques, for example, let's go on a retreat. We'll go on a retreat, we'll eat really good food, we'll get really relaxed, we'll be around people that we like, we won't be in any danger, we'll be in nature, it'll be a beautiful place. We'll be very relaxed, won't be worried about bills or about our job or about anything. We'll just be present and attentive and in the moment. We'll start to experience bliss. Oh, I wish it could be like this all the time. Why can't we live here? Why don't we open our own retreat center? I want to feel like this all the time. That is a state of cessation. It's the cessation of our day-to-day suffering. So that's a little vacation. But it isn't our reality. And nirvana is like that. Nirvana is in the heart and mind. Another question? In the back?
Yes. On the site, I read a quote of Master Samalonvio. Roughly, he said, "One can continue the great work after death. Obviously, it means if we retain consciousness at the moment of death." Is he referring to the continual destruction of the ego in the afterlife, or is he referring to continuing the work in the next life at the level we left off in this life?
Excellent question. The Master Samael stated very clearly that we can continue the work on ourselves after death. So the question is, can we do that? Is that what I'm talking about? And does it mean that we can continue working on the ego in the death state, or that we take another birth and have the opportunity to continue at the same level at which we are now? Well, the whole thing depends on our karma. It's really up to us. When he stated that we can continue our work after death, he means that if we are capable of retaining cognizance while out of the body, separated from the body, then when the body is dead, we can keep working. The same way we can work now in the astral plane. But what is the nature of that work? It is to gain self-knowledge. When you're working on yourself out of your body, this is the primary work. To examine and understand yourself, your mind. Why you suffer. What is your karma? How did you get here? It's to comprehend that. It's the most important work. That work can continue after one's dead, if you're cognizant. Likewise, if you have that skill and you have the karma, in other words, you have the capital with which to pay for it, you can take a new body that will give you the chance to continue that work. But if, for example, you may have done the training, but you didn't help anyone in your life, you did a lot of work on yourself, but you didn't do any sacrifice for others, you probably won't get it. Everything costs something. That's why we study 3 factors. Death of the ego, birth of the soul, sacrifice for others. These 3 need to be in very powerful equilibrium with each other every day. Sacrifice is extremely important. Sacrifice is not giving $1 for a lecture or giving some Bibles to somebody that needs Bibles. That's nice. That is not sacrifice. Think about the word sacrifice. When you sacrifice something, it's painful. You give a lot. It doesn't need to be money or goods. It can be energy. It can be time. It can be attention. It's to give what's needed. Not to get something, not to get praise, but because it's needed. This is the whole clue of the Mahayana path, which is Gnosis. This is a Mahayana teaching, a greater vehicle teaching. And the basis of that path is bodhicitta, the awakening mind, which is the essence of Christ, which gives. Great example of that is this event that's coming up soon, which we call Good Friday and Easter. That whole holiday, if you study it carefully, you will understand more about what we've been talking about today. If you read the gospel and study what happened to Jesus, the great master who represented Christ in the cosmic drama. The death is his, not only death of all that's impure, the death of sin, it is also the death of self as an act of sacrifice for others. Everything that he did, everything he said, was for others. That sacrifice. He didn't do it with money. He did it with his energy, with his love. That sacrifice. So through that type of death, he earned a type of birth which is incomprehensible, which we celebrate on Easter. We celebrate on Christmas. So we need to study those symbols as they apply to ourselves, and we'll have lectures about that coming up. But to be more specific with the question, it comes down to what we earn. And that has to be a relationship between us and the law of karma, if we can earn it. It is possible, yes.
In the lectures you said that the most of us will not receive another physical body. If we do not get another and we go to the abyss, then purified, is the work we do up until the pointless, until now is pointless, or will be useful the next time we get a human body?
That's also a great question. Yes, in previous lectures I explained what Master Samael explained, which is that most of us are on our last or next to last existence in a humanoid body. And this is because of the natural stages of evolution that this human race is passing through. We are at the end of an era. Humanity is a collective mind. We all like to think we're individuals, but really we're animals with intellect. And animals move in groups. This whole humanity is a group that has become very sick, psychologically, very sick. And the only way nature can help us now is to purify us through hell. So that's why these teachings are being given freely and openly to anybody who wants to take the last chance to use it and escape that process. So it's true that most of us are on our last existence, the vast majority. And it's also true that many of the humanoid bodies on this planet now do not have a human soul in them. They are what we call klipot, or empty shells. They are people without conscience who just behave evil and are here only to fulfill the karma, to make everyone else suffer. And that's why we have so much suffering spreading on the world and getting worse. So the question continued, will our work be wasted if we don't earn another life? No. Your work is never wasted if it is cognizant work, truly conscious work. What that means is that if you truly learn something in your soul, that will be part of you for eternity, forever. But if you're only learning it with your personality or your intellect, you will lose that. When your physical body dies, everything superficial in us dies. The personality and all of its habits. So we could have been a really good Catholic, memorized the Gospels, gone to every church service, Wednesdays and Fridays and Sundays, and been for every christening and every event we're supposed to go to. But if that was all just mechanical, which it generally is, we won't retain any of that. But if we take one scripture and truly comprehend it in our soul so that it changes our very way of perceiving life, from now on, you will never lose that. This is the value of what's stated in the first line of the scripture I gave you today. Study, reflect, meditate. Comprehend things very deeply, you will never lose it. So if it happens that some of us, which probably will happen, that some of us die and don't earn another body, then unfortunately, that consciousness will have to pass through the great recycling of nature as long as their karma demands it. And they will suffer. And we will all have compassion on those souls, on each other, because we'll probably all pass through it together. And in the end, that soul will emerge out of that process, called the second death, purified, but retaining whatever knowledge it had acquired, conscious knowledge. That is part of the soul. This happens even with bodhisattvas, great masters who fall. There are great masters who get identified, who make mistakes, usually because of sex, and they fall, and they lose their status, and the ego reemerges in them, and they become hypnotized once more by the illusions of life, and they get sucked back into the abyss and processed by nature. For them, the suffering is millions of times worse than it is for the rest of us, because they've already built something inside that doesn't belong to mechanical nature. They've built bodies of the soul. They've committed a grave crime because they have broken the trust that was given to them by the conscious circle of humanity. They have enormous karmic debts to pay from that type of failure. And so they will process through that region over millions of years, where with most of us it may be thousands, depending on the depth of our ego. They will suffer a lot more. But in the end, when that soul is finally cleansed, it retains the knowledge it had acquired. But it has to suffer a lot. Another question back there?
Is it possible to split this consciousness and to leave a little consciousness here to live this life and to take another birth before we die and to be conscious of both?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The question is about splitting consciousness and leaving a portion here so that when we die. No, it doesn't work like that, if I understand the question. Our consciousness is already divided. It's dispersed and divided amongst all of the fighting desires that afflict us now. It is not possible for us to take a percentage of our consciousness and implant it somewhere and save it as if it's a material element. Consciousness is not matter. It utilizes matter. It is an energy, but it is not an energy like other kinds of energy. It's not something that can be manipulated like salt and sugar. What one has to do is learn how to work with the laws of nature. Instead of trying to break the laws or trick the laws, we have to learn to work with them. You cannot trick Divine Mother Nature. You cannot trick your own inner Divine Mother in your own inner being. And they're the ones who apply the law to you. So if you want to somehow advance yourself into the next level, then follow their guidance. And what they will tell you is simple. Behave better. Wake up. Transform your energy. Be a better person. Stop making these mistakes you've been making for centuries. And if you follow their guidance, you won't need any kind of trick, dividing yourself like some comic books try to tell us that we can do. Any other question?
What is the relationship between the essence and the sexual energy?
What is the relationship between essence and sexual energy? That's a very interesting question, and it depends on the level of teaching that you're receiving as to the answer you will receive. Since this is a class about Tantra, and specifically about Tantric methodology, I'll give you the answer according to Tantra. According to Tantra, sexual energy is the same thing as consciousness. That's why in Tantra, if you read any scripture from Tibetan Buddhism or from Hindu Tantra, real Hindu Tantra, they use terminology, words that can be translated either way. Vidya, in Sanskrit, is the vital essence, the energy, which relates to the mind, and it also relates to sex. In Hinduism, that's what they often use. Also, ohas, which also has a psychological and a physical aspect related with sexual energy and mind. Also, there's a few other terms like that in Sanskrit. It's very complex. In Buddhism, the most important term is bodhicitta. We even talked about this word a lot and it has levels of meaning. But in the tantric level, bodhicitta means sexual energy. Bodhicitta is psychological. Strictly translated, it means awakening mind, similar to ohas in Sanskrit. Bodhicitta means Christ mind. It is the type of mind, type of consciousness that seeks to serve others, and it is very cognizant, bright, and awake. Its chief characteristic is dual, has two aspects. The first is compassion, conscious love. That conscious love is empowered by its second aspect, which is wisdom, knowledge of the emptiness, prajna. That's the meaning of bodhicitta. So that is psychological. But bodhicitta itself, as matter in the body, is sexual energy. This is why when you study tantric scriptures, they state the bodhicitta must be retained, transformed, brought up the spine to the brain. That is not talking about the intention to save others. It's talking about sexual energy. So what that means, in essence, is if you waste your sexual energy, you're throwing away the way to awaken consciousness. This is why the black magicians, the demons, the black tantrics, use the orgasm as a method to awaken consciousness negatively. There's a polarity here. You can awaken positively, you can awaken negatively. Both condition or modify or affect consciousness. When you follow the method of Black Tantra, which utilizes the orgasm, you take that power of orgasm, which is psychological and material, and you condition consciousness with lust, with pride, with envy, with gluttony, with greed. And that person awakens powers. They awaken consciousness in hell. The white tantric retains the sexual energy, purifies the mind, and uses that power to awaken consciousness unmodified by lust, by greed, by gluttony, by fear. They become an angel, a Buddha, a master. So these are the two differences. Both depend on sexual energy. And that's not only the energy used in the sexual act, but the sexual energy that's used from moment to moment. It's the most powerful energy in us. It is not just in the glands. That energy affects our entire organism and our entire psychology. The root modifier or manager of sexual energy is the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain. That demonstrates and proves its psychological component. And notice, when sexual energy is active, your mind can't think of anything else. Because the sexual energy in the mind can never be separated. Thus, if you want to free your mind from suffering, you have to free your sexual energy from lust. Simple. Another question?
If someone has taken their own life 4 years ago, and as a result of that someone has awakened their consciousness, can their suicide be seen as sacrifice in some cosmic sense? Can I descend to free her since our true nature is timelessness?
I'm not sure, again, if I understood this question. I believe that it's asking if someone has died and after death awakened consciousness, can someone here help them? Is that the question? More or less?
No, yeah. Can the person that awakened the consciousness go there and free her since our true nature is timeless?
Okay. Well, this is a pretty complicated question, but I'll try to answer it as best I can. Once someone has died, the physical body is separated from the consciousness. In the vast majority of cases, the dead person has no cognizance of being dead, as I explained. Furthermore, they are not the person that we think they are, because their personality is no longer connected to them. So if it was our friend named Mary, who we grew up with and went to school with, Mary, that student who had all those ways of talking and thinking and believing and acting, Mary's gone. Personality is dead. What's in hell is the mind-heart, which may have another name, totally different way of perceiving, We may not even recognize them. Also, that Mary is not one person like us. We are not an individual. If any of us were to really go and see ourselves in the fifth dimension as we truly are, we would not find one person. We would find a multiplicity of competing desires. And we may experience this in our dreams. When we look different, we are different, we have a different name, different way of behaving. We are not this person here and now. What we experience here and now is the personality, the mask for those competing wills. In the astral plane, we are a multiplicity. We are not one person. So it becomes very difficult to say, I want to go into the world of the dead and talk to my mother or talk to my wife who died. This is not easy. It depends on which aspect of that person you're going to attempt to approach. If the personality hasn't fully decayed yet, if the person was buried, not cremated, the personality may still be around. You can go talk to their personality, but that's not really them. Or you can go into the astral plane and talk to their pride or their lust or their attachment to you, but that's also not really them. So it's a tricky question. Furthermore, can you help them? Yes, because in the heart of all of that is a consciousness, but is asleep. In order to awaken that consciousness and bring them out of there, takes an enormous amount of energy and effort, and generally will fail. Because the person doesn't have the training sufficient to keep their consciousness awake. Samael Aun told many examples of this type of experience where he tried to help people who had died. And he eventually gave up. He said, it's pointless. They're dead. They don't know they're dead. They don't want to know they're dead. They don't want help. They want to keep going to work every day in the land of the dead. So the best thing to do is to have love and compassion for them, but they're going to go through their process. Nonetheless, in that world, there are angels and masters who are there attempting to help those who have died. We can help them by sending them our prayers, by sending them our good intentions. There are even certain rituals we can do to help the dead. But generally speaking, this is extremely difficult. And it's because of the nature of our psychology. The difference can be if the person who died actually had done work on themselves. If they actually had had training of some kind, then you can help them. As an example, in pretty much every religion, especially in Gnosis or in other forms of Tantra, there are rituals one can perform for the one who is dying or who has died. And generally, those need to be done within 40 days of death, depending on the specific ritual. Those rituals can help a person a lot. But again, it requires that they have training. They have to have the ability to maintain cognizance. The dead person needs that. Their consciousness needs the ability to receive the help. But this is rare. Another question?
Can you lose a chance to awake conscious in this life if you have masturbated too much?
Can you lose the chance to awaken consciousness in this life if you have masturbated too much? You can always have a chance to use consciousness and awareness just by remembering to do it. We lose the chance to use consciousness when we forget ourselves. Anytime that we forget ourselves, we've lost it. And we forget ourselves all the time, all day long. Most of us go days, even having received this training. We can go days, even weeks and months, and all of a sudden, oh, I need to be observing myself. It takes a lot of training to learn to be consistent and to establish this as our way of living. Expect that it can take years to learn it. Just expect that. Don't expect to become skilled at this in a few days or a few weeks. You might. But if you go into it expecting, this might take me 20 years to learn, it's worth it. Even if it takes 40 years, it's worth it. It'll make a difference. However, if you're masturbating, if you're having orgasmic sex, mechanical animal sex, you are directly contradicting your efforts to do this. Directly contradicting it. You're taking the very power that gives you the ability to do this and throwing it away. Not only that, you're feeding lust and making it stronger Any desire that you feed, you strengthen it. Just imagine that you've discovered that inside of your mind is a big gorilla. A big gorilla. And he's hungry. And he's hungry for whatever you've always been feeding him. Lust, the orgasm, pride, gluttony. He loves Twinkies. He loves ding-dongs. He loves whatever it is you love to eat. And he's very lazy. All those characteristics that you have that are harmful. But the main one is lust in all of us. So you've heard this teaching now and you think, oh gosh, I really want to try this. I want to stop wasting my energy feeding that gorilla. I want to save that sexual energy for divine purposes. I'm tired of suffering. I want to awaken and experience reality. I want to see the truth. I want to talk to God. I want to talk to a master. I want to see the real thing. I'm tired of this. Well, I'll tell you, the gorilla is going to get real mad. Real mad. And real hungry. And he will do everything in his power for you to feed him. It is very difficult, especially in the beginning. This is why it's so important in the first place, as the scripture stated, study, reflect, and meditate. Study the teachings a lot. You need to learn to train yourself, to really understand it, to have deep conviction about it. This cannot be something superficial. If it's superficial in you, you won't stick to it. I guarantee it. You need to understand it with your heart, not the intellect, with your heart. When you get it in your heart, and you know it, then you'll look at that gorilla and say, why would I feed you? You're an animal, a beast in my mind, who only makes me and everyone else suffer. Why would I make you stronger? Why would I give you that energy that you want me to give you? The orgasm, chocolate cake, whatever it is we indulge in, we're gluttonous about, or we want to feed and nourish in ourselves egotistically. You can eat chocolate cake. Don't say I'm not trying to take you away from your favorite sweet. Unless it's gluttonous. And then you should consider it. The point is, any behavior that you engage in and you feel in your heart, I know it's wrong, you need to stop. That's really what this is all about. Wouldn't it be nice to have a life in which you didn't feel regret? Don't you wish you could look around your life, your mind, and say, I truly have done my best. I was tempted, but I didn't give in. Well, it's up to you. It's your choice. In every event you face in your life, it is your choice. Nobody forces you to have the orgasm. Nobody forces you to be angry, to be arrogant, to be envious, to be gluttonous or lazy. You choose. That's what this is all about. Your choice. You're free to do what you like. Just understand the consequences. Guilt, remorse, they're up to you. Those happen because the consciousness is in pain. When we do something we know we shouldn't do, we hurt ourselves, and that's that regret, that feeling in the heart, I shouldn't have done that. But you did. Learn from it. Don't repeat it. If you're repeating a habit, it's because you don't understand it. Study, reflect, and meditate. If you're feeling doubt, regret, pain, study the cause of that. Find out why it happened. Don't repeat the mistake. This is the essence of it. Cognizance, knowledge, and making good choices. Any questions? No? Any back here? Yes? Oh, gosh. Okay. Oh, that's it. No more questions. Thank you very much.
To learn more about what you learned in this lecture, we invite you to explore the books published by Glorian Publishing, available from booksellers worldwide. You may also be interested in online courses or upcoming retreats, all of which you can learn about at gnosticteachings.org. All of this has been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Will you help others to benefit from this knowledge? Most spiritual schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. Every donation helps. Make a donation now at gnosticteachings.org. Thank you. May all beings be happy.